Now, as I know, it gets very controversial to talk about the causes of same-sex attraction, because as we were kind of touching on earlier, there is a whole, world of folks who say it is innate. You can't change same-sex attraction. It is what it is. We are born this way, right? And recently, we did an interview with Becca Cook, who I know you know, and he, phenomenal guy, amazing story. And, we got some interesting feedback from the episode, largely positive. People were really inspired, encouraged by his story. And his story is about, of course, living the gay lifestyle for many years and then having this conversion and him saying, I'm not going to live the gay lifestyle anymore. He still may experience same-sex attraction. That's, his story to tell, but he's not acting out on them, right? Because it's against his values. Mm-hmm. Anyways, and he says against nature is what he says as well. So there were some really interesting comments back. I want to share one comment we got because I want to hear your take on this. And this is from someone who is, I think identifies as Christian. They want to, Christianity is an important part of their life. And they said, and this is in response to Beckett saying that if you want to shore up this identity, the masculine identity of a young boy, it is very important for him to have a strong relationship with his father, like you were describing earlier, at a young age, for him to feel this connection and this nurture at that key points of 2.5, like you were describing. Beckett, of course, shared how he didn't have that as a kid. And, that kind of helped to at least exacerbate maybe his same-sex attraction. Anyway, so this was a response from a comment we got. This is harmful information. And contrary to church teaching, he's talking about the Catholic Church, the Catechism states that the causes of same-sex attraction are, quote, largely unexplained. To claim that upbringing contributes to homosexuality has been repeatedly disproven by studies. This is not in line with Catholic social teaching, and this video should be taken down for promoting falsehoods. Now, I have to know, what does the Catechism actually say on this? I think that's important. This is from the 1992 Catholic Catechism of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church acknowledges that the quote-unquote psychological genesis of same-sex attraction remains quote-unquote largely unexplained. The Catechism, and this is from Catechism of the Catholic Church 2357. Now, it has a lot more to say about it, but it's saying as of 1992, the psychological genesis of same-sex attraction remains largely unexplained.
Right.
Do you agree, disagree? What are your thoughts?
I disagree with everything that person said, that commenter, except for the first sentence. I actually agree. The commenter said this is harmful information. I agree. It is harmful. It's harmful to people who have a radical gender ideology. Stories like Beckett's, personal testimonies, are extremely threatening to radical gender ideology, and they absolutely they constitute a threat. So that is the only thing I can agree with in the whole comment. As to the scientific literature, yes, let's talk about the scientific literature on this. You were talking about transgender earlier. If you want to look at the transgender individuals who are transgender and their early relationship with their parents, I mean, there's a whole body of literature on this. I mean, one study found that men who were transgender, 52% of them had a mother with full-blown borderline personality disorder. That's in a published study.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. That's exponentially beyond what we would see in a random sampling from the general public. What is the random
sampling?
Probably 2 to 3%.
Wow.
Okay, we're talking 56.
It makes me want to cry, honestly, because I've seen those kids that are being transed, and often the mother, there's just something off. Not every time,
yeah,
but often, 52% of the time, according to the study. Oh. And it's just that's child abuse. In my view, 100% that's child abuse.
Yes, there is so much evidence here. I mean, one study, it was I think it was a meta-analysis that found that 45% of the people who were transgender males who wanted to be women or thought that they actually were women, 45% of them had a disorganized attachment style. Okay, to create a disorganized attachment style, we're talking severe early experiences. So that's not my area of focus, but for individuals who are interested, they can look into the psychological literature. It's going to be covered over. The psychological establishment, maybe doesn't want people to look into this, but the data's there, especially if you look up attachment style and disorganized attachment style and transgender. But to go to the person who was talking about this, about same-sex attractions, let's talk about the scientific evidence at play here. So the scientific literature is pretty clear that gay-identified men commonly report strained, distant relationships with their fathers. Okay, it's pretty clear. The only question is why. And right now there are two competing theories. One theory has been posited by the LGBT theorists, and the theory, their explanation for the distance between the gay identified son and the father, that emotional distance, they would say is because the boy we've used ontological. The boy is ontologically gay. In other words, he's biologically predetermined to be gay. And the father is consciously or unconsciously picking up on that. And so because of society's homophobia, the father will withdraw either due to conscious or unconscious homophobic values. He pulls himself away. Okay. So that's one explanation. The other explanation is that there's a causative relationship here, that the distant critical actions of the father cause the son with the more sensitive temperament to turn away. So a researcher named Dr. Sherry Golden devoted her doctoral dissertation to exploring which of these two arguments has a stronger scientific basis. So she measured 70 fathers of gay-identified men, 70 fathers of gay-identified men with 3 well-established psychological assessments. These fathers were shown to exhibit indirect, non-nurturing, or low engagement types of father involvement activities with their gay sons, gay-identified sons, as opposed to direct, high nurturance or high engagement. Dr. Golden also examined those fathers, she examined their relationships with their own fathers. And those fathers reported receiving similar fathering from their fathers. Okay. So generational. That's it. So Golden's work indicates that there may be an intergenerational transmission of attachment patterns through the male line that may set the stage for male homosexuality. It's not so much genetics, but if people want to view this from Golden's perspective and from the perspectives of the psychoanalysts and others, we're talking about an attachment lens, viewing the whole topic from an attachment lens. And this intergenerational transmission may set the stage for the boy who has the more sensitive temperament. You know, you get a sequence like that, and then you get a boy with a sensitive temperament. Well, that boy may be more likely to perceive the father's reactions as rejection. He interprets it that way. He turns away, disidentifies from the father, and then it sets him on a course in which he has these unmet needs for male attention, affection, approval, which eventually becomes sexualized. So in conclusion, Golden's work found that there's a constellation of factors, but that early relationship with the father appears to play a causative role. Now, there are 2 objections, which I'm sure you're going to get in the comments. So let me address the objections right away. One objection is, well, why didn't the fathers identify as gay? I mean, they were fathered the same way, so why not? It's a good question. And this is speculation, but there are several reasons why the father had a different life experience. One is the father himself may have had a different temperament. 2 is his relationship with the father's relationship with his mother may have been different. There could have been different peer relationships, or the father does have same-sex attractions, but he's suppressing it. And the last time I spoke to an audience, one guy with same-sex attraction raised his hand. He said, there's another option. The dad's suppressing it. And because he said that was his case. So that can also play a role. Again, it's speculation, and we'd have to do further research into this. Some people will say, well, wait a second, but I had a distant, detached father and an over-involved mother. You should have seen my mother. She was terrible. You know, you wouldn't believe it. And how come I'm not gay? You know, and so, but when I talk to these people, and that's a legitimate objection, when I talk to these people, I say, well, tell me about your childhood. Tell me about, and as we begin speaking, it turns out, yeah, actually, I had a surrogate male figure. I had another male. Usually it is a grandfather, an uncle, or a mentor, but most often it's a grandfather in the family who sees the family dynamic, sees the limitations of the father, and decides it's time for me to step in. And he can counterbalance some of the parenting from the father. So this is what people say to me frequently.
And what does that look like then for the grandfather stepping into this kind of family system where the father has more maybe withdrawn and not connecting with this very young boy?
Right.
Is the grandfather like roughhousing with that little boy, or like taking him to go hunting, or, you know, I mean, he's 3 years old. What would he do? Take him to the park? I don't know. What is he doing? What sort of activities?
So many times what happens in these situations is if the father is strong but not warm, okay, so he's kind of like, you know, a drill sergeant.
An authoritarian. Then the grandfather comes in and gives the warmth. If the father's warm but not strong, then the grandfather comes in and gives the kid, you know, more structure in his life. So it's that kind of, it's usually along those 2 variables to counterbalance. So I think one element that I'd like to explore more is this idea of like a temperament, that what you're seeing across the board, it sounds like, and what this researcher saw across the board was a temperamental, a temperament that these boys had, that regardless of the father figure, they had it. So that is nature, not nurture.
Exactly.
Because we all are born with certain temperaments. You see it very young. I mean, I have 3 kids and like you can see it within 6 months, even the fiery temperament versus the like passive temperament. And there's not nature. It's not nurture, although nurture can kind of develop something more, but it definitely, there's nature there, or nurture can develop it, but there's definitely nature there. So I'm curious, is it your view then, and what does the data say with regard to same-sex attracted men about the temperament piece? Are all of them, is it like 99% of them, largely speaking, have this constellation of temperaments that are pretty set from a young age? Or do you have, because there's like there's this sort of in kind of conversation, there's like, oh, there's the gay man who's like comes across as straight. He looks like a man's man. Right. He likes to be macho, whatever, right? And then there's the stereotypical gay man who's like, no, he's more artistic and, very emotional, relational, maybe you use the word effeminate even. How does that fit with this idea that temperaments are there's a pretty set grouping of temperaments that these boys would have that would not predetermine same-sex activity, but might indicate later. Later same-sex attraction.
And that's an important distinction because, it's not necessarily predetermined, but it could predispose.
None of it's predeterminative because people make their own choices in the end.
That's right. So we don't know exactly. There was a study by Ganna et al. That looked at it was a genome study. And actually, when you had Michael Gasparo on your show, he was speaking about this, that it was a very, very small percentage. They couldn't find a gay gene after all this work, but they found a constellation of genetic factors that had some very weak similarities among men with same-sex attractions. And so that constellation of factors might be genetics that is responsible for the more sensitive temperament that we're talking about. But it's not a robust study. It's not enough robust data for us to look at being able to divide it in terms of percentage. Which percentage is it? What percentage is temperament a causative factor? We don't know that exactly yet.